The return of Donald Trump, unscripted.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Mark Niquette, reporter for Bloomberg News. Dale Butlin, Democratic strategist. And Mike Gonadakis, Republican strategist.
This was the week we have been waiting for. The first debate, no scripts, no teleprompters, two unliked candidates trying to get voters to like them at least a little. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's debate lived up to the hype. Clinton seemed more prepared and composed. Donald Trump was back to his old self. They sparred over trade deals, the Iraq War, emails, and Donald Trump's temperament.
He loves beauty contests, supporting them and hanging around them. And he called this woman Miss Piggy. Then he called her Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Donald, she has a name.
Where did you find
her
this?
name
Where
is
did you find
Alicia
this?
Machado.
Where did you find
and
this?
she has become a U.S. citizen, and you can bet she's going to vote this November.
Okay, good.
Then early Friday, Trump went on a Twitter rant calling Machado disgusting, a con, and his worst Miss Universe. Mike Gonadakis, Donald Trump needs some suburban women, independents, moderate Republican women. How does this help?
Well, it doesn't help him with certain demographics, specifically Democrats.
Half the population.
Half the population, maybe. But 30 minutes before I came here to the studio, I printed off the Real Clear Politics average. And as you can see, neither candidate's above 200 Electoral College votes. So there's 185 Electoral College votes still up for grabs. With all the gaffes Donald Trump has done, Hillary Clinton can still not separate herself, which speaks volumes of Hillary Clinton. At the end of the day, the debate...
Not many of those polls were done before the debate.
This is...
That's the average, but many of the average polls were done before the debate.
But at the end of the day, if just looking at the debate, if you're a Democrat, you think Hillary won. If you're a Republican, you think Trump won. But I don't think anything was swayed one way or another after the first debate. Keep in mind, Mitt Romney, by all accounts, did very well, beat Barack Obama after the first debate in 12, and we all know Barack Obama was reelected.
Yeah, so, I think it's something about Trump supporters. They start to live in the unreality that Donald Trump himself lives in. The truth is, every single poll that has been done since the debate has shown that Hillary Clinton has a small but significant lead in 5 out of the 7 key swing states. Donald Trump had one objective in this debate, and that was to allay concerns about his temperament and maybe win over the support of some undecided voters, particularly white, college-educated women. Instead, through a total lack of preparation and his stubborn refusal to ever admit a mistake or apologize if he makes one, he did the exact opposite.
Is the undisciplined Trump back for good now? He was very disciplined for about 2 months, Mark, on the trail, reading from the prompter, staying on message. The Twitter had sort of calmed down a bit. Is this the real Trump back now?
Well, we'll see. I mean, there was interesting reaction after the debate. Sources from within the Trump campaign were saying that they wanted him to do more preparation. They tried to get him to prepare more, do mock debates, and he just really wasn't interested or willing to do it, and that there will be a push now, before the next debate coming up to get him to prepare more. This next debate is a town hall format where, you're on a stool and you have to walk around and talk, so there probably should be more of that kind of practicing going on. But, we'll see. I mean, Donald Trump has always been very clear that he's going to do what he wants to do. And even in response to some of these stories that were coming out after the debate about his lack of preparation, he essentially said, well, you can't trust them all because they're all sources and media make up their sources.
Laura, Hillary Clinton had a solid performance. I think she didn't make any mistakes. She didn't really hit any home runs. I mean, the Machado piece with Miss Universe was what had legs through the week. But how does she help herself in this debate?
Well, I think I think it was a fascinating debate to watch, and I think that Hillary Clinton had to walk a real tight line between not being too policy wonky, but in command of the facts and information, being likable, but also being a little bit aggressive and pushing her case. And I think she accomplished those pretty well. She didn't really step on any landmines. I think she got tripped up a little bit on the TPP, support of the TPP.
Yeah, but let's get to that clip right now. This is the one part of the debate where Donald Trump did score some points when they were discussing first NAFTA, which Bill Clinton signed into law, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Hillary Clinton first supported and then said she opposed. Here's that clip.
I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in.
You called it the gold standard.
Well, I hope.
You called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
The only one that's questionable there was Bernie Sanders, Laura. It was Bernie Sanders' opposition to the TPP, which caused perhaps Hillary Clinton to reevaluate her position.
Right, but I think that she, she set some traps for Donald Trump, and he stepped right into them. I mean, I think he got dinged up on the tax returns and him kind of bragging that it makes me smart if I'm not paying any taxes. The Iraq War, the whole thing about being against the Iraq War from the get-go, and that's not the case. And then the birther movement. I think that she gave him a couple shiners in the debate.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone cares about birth certificates. Obviously, Barack Obama was elected, didn't release his birth certificate. But the birth certificate or taxes, at the end of the day, people care about our country, our jobs, our immigration policy, and that's why Donald Trump is still in this race. And by all accounts, LA tracking poll time, he's up 5 points as of a half hour ago today. The Los Angeles Times daily tracking poll.
That was always the outlier. I don't know what methodology is.
I do think that people care about this birth certificate thing and also the taxes. These are simple issues that people can wrap their minds around, and it speaks to character and transparency.
Yeah, so on the birther thing, which Donald Trump pushed, by the way, for 5 years after President Obama released his long-form certificate, was racist to the core, and always was. It was an attempt to undermine the legitimacy of the nation's first black president. But Mike, let me just say one more thing, because I don't want to leave this Machado thing, because I think this is very significant. Not because, yes, people do care about the economy. This is a year when people want change. If you had nominated anybody else, you'd be winning in a walk. But this guy's temperament, Mike, I think is his Achilles heel. And I think that this Machado thing demonstrates it. Here he is at 4 o'clock in the morning, sending out a barrage of tweets saying that Hillary Clinton duped her and urging people to watch a sex tape. And in my judgment, nothing says presidential like a 70-year-old man sending out tweets at 4 in the morning urging people to watch a sex tape.
And there's no evidence that there is a sex tape. Mike, I'm gonna get your take, because we have Republican strategists who come on this show, and you can tell that they are reluctant to say that they support Donald Trump. They're very much opposed to Hillary Clinton, but they're not full-throated saying, I want Donald Trump. You are.
Sure.
But you're also a big supporter of John Kasich, and he wants nothing to do with Donald Trump. What does he know that you don't, and why the difference there?
We live in the greatest country in the world, and each human being, especially those around this table, are allowed to vote for whoever they want. You can support both John Kasich and Donald Trump. You can absolutely do that, because I'm doing it right now. I think John Kasich's best governor in Ohio's history, and I think Donald Trump will make a great president. He won fair and square. I was for John Kasich. We lost.
Is it because of his promise to appoint, because you are the head of Right to Life, very much an anti-abortion proponent, or very much against abortion. Is it because of the chances of supporting or nominating a conservative Supreme Court justice now and in years to come?
100%. For social conservatives like me, it's the United States Supreme Court, period. I have an 85% chance Trump will put pro-life conservatives on the court. I have a 0% chance Hillary Clinton will.
Dale, you're with Hillary Clinton, and she's still unlikable, so I think she probably helped herself a little bit this debate. How enthusiastic are you for her? And how enthusiastic are Democrats for her in the final month of this campaign? I'm
enthusiastic, and I believe that you're going to see Democrats generally becoming more so as you get closer and closer to the election. It's really intriguing. In the state of Ohio, for example, look at the A-list surrogates that Hillary has willing to come in for her. Everyone from the president to the vice president to her own vice presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Donald Trump is here so much because he doesn't have anybody who's willing to come in for him. He doesn't even have the governor of the state who's willing to be anywhere near him.
That's a perfect segue to our next topic, because at least in the last several cycles here in Central Ohio, we have been blessed with nearly weekly visits by the nominees for president. This time around, not so much. Neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump has visited Central Ohio in nearly 2 months. Trump regularly visits other parts of Ohio. He has a special fondness for Northeast Ohio, Youngstown, and also the Dayton area. Monday's scheduled event will be Hillary Clinton's first in Ohio since Labor Day. So, Dale, more on this point. Why hasn't? Does it say anything about Ohio and its role in the race that Hillary Clinton herself has not been here when Barack Obama John Kerry have all been here. John McCain, Mitt Romney all came here all the time.
Well, Hillary will be here next week. She's been kind of busy lately. She first had to recover from pneumonia, and then she had her debate prep. But she does have surrogates. The other thing is, unlike Donald Trump, she has a robust media effort going on here. She's outspending him by millions of dollars, getting her message out on television. But I would argue with you, or to you, that the main reason that she has not been here as much as Donald Trump is because she has a path to victory that does not include Ohio. She does not need Ohio to win. It's the reverse for Trump. He has no path to 270 without Ohio. She has multiple paths there without the state.
Laura, the New York Times had an article this week that says our role, Ohio's role as a bellwether, a key bellwether state, is fading because of our demographic changes and things like that. Is that the case? Is our role fading, or is it just because, as Dale said, Trump needs us more than
It might be
Hillary
both.
does?
It might be both because Ohio, U.S. Census data shows that Ohio is older, whiter, and less affluent and less educated than other states, or than the national average. It used to be we always reflected the salad that is America. That's not the case anymore. It's starting to not be the case anymore.
Mark, Central Ohio is probably a reason why neither Trump or Clinton have been here, is because this is really Hillary Clinton's territory. I mean, this is the education level is a bit higher, less manufacturing job losses here. This is probably going to go Hillary's way, Franklin County anyway.
Yeah, and I think Donald Trump also has some issues with suburban areas in Central Ohio, particularly with suburban women, folks who might have been more inclined to vote for Mitt Romney in 2012 but are leery of Donald Trump. But I also think it's, that Donald Trump does see more opportunity in Northeast Ohio, and I think a lot of his strategy for carrying Ohio is to appeal to these Reagan Democrats or these, working class voters who are enamored with him, particularly on the issue of trade, and that he sees his path in Ohio as much as, peeling off votes from Hillary Clinton, and I think also counting on her not being able to turn out the kind of numbers she needs in her base, particularly among African Americans and millennials.
Mike, is Ohio it for Donald Trump? If he doesn't win Ohio, there's no way he can win the presidency?
Historically speaking, yes, but this is not a normal election. We all know that. So anything could happen. No one knows for sure. But I think Donald Trump, according to Quinnipiac poll, our gold standard is up by 4 in Ohio after her spending $26 million. The Columbus Dispatch just reported 3 days ago that Bill Clinton was in Toledo on Monday, and only 100 people showed up, Mike. The former president of the United States to stump for his wife, and according to Randy Ludlow at the Columbus Dispatch, only 100 people showed up. That speaks volumes. He's going to win Ohio.
Dale, if Trump wins Ohio, does Ohio become more like what West Virginia has become, in that West Virginia for years was solidly Democratic, and then it's now solidly Republican? Does Ohio, could it drift that way?
Well, it's not going to ever drift that far because West Virginia historically has been heavily dependent on coal and so forth. Ohio's not dependent. We have a little area in the southeastern part of the state that has been involved in the coal industry. But I do think that Laura's right. When you look at the demographics of Ohio, and particularly the educated demographic, the truth is we have fewer college-educated people in our state than in most of the battleground states around us, and it's no accident that Hillary is spending her time not here in Ohio, but in states like Florida, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, where you have, first of all, you have a less white population in those states, except for New Hampshire, but New Hampshire is a highly educated state. So that's where her strength is. That's where she's spending her time. I personally believe, and have for a long time, that we may very well lose Ohio and Iowa, but I still believe we're going to win the election.
Mark, the one question I had with the New York Times article that said that our status as a bellwether was fading is that it pretty much focused on visits, the candidate visits. Didn't really talk much about the amount of television advertising we're seeing and the organization that Hillary Clinton's campaign has built here. How much of a factor should that be in deciding how important, or gauging how important Ohio is?
Yeah, I think just focusing on the candidate, in this case herself, showing up in the state can be a little overplayed. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's important. It's a sign of priorities for a campaign, to be sure. But I think that article sort of did point out, like Laura said, that maybe the demographics are shifting in Ohio, where maybe we're not a bellwether in the sense of reflecting the U.S. But I think it's hard to say that we're not still a key battleground state politically. And part of what's going on this cycle, too, is Donald Trump's making a little unusual. And I think you also have to look, like you're saying, at the resources that are being invested. And, one of the key factors, I think, for this race and how it turns out could well be, what's invested in the ground game, the so-called nuts and bolts of get out the vote, which is beyond, what the polls might capture, or at least, will factor into the outcome more than, what we're seeing on the airways right now. But, by any measure, you can't discount the amount that the Clinton campaign has invested in Ohio.
And to echo Mark's comments, being the cynic, if Ohio wasn't important anymore, why did she invest $26 million in 70 field offices? She's losing Ohio. New York Times, in my opinion, as a Republican, is covering for her, saying, now Ohio doesn't matter anymore.
All right. In Democrats' quest to retake the Senate, Ohio was key to their plan. They picked a well-known, well-liked candidate to take on a Republican incumbent who still kind of lacks some name recognition. So far, it has not worked out. Now, some Democrats are feeling buyer's remorse as Ted Strickland's luster fades and his funds peter out. Their diminishing hopes come as Rob Portman has been recognized for running a web-savvy campaign. The latest Real Clear Politics average shows Portman's lead has changed little over the past 2 weeks. He still leads Strickland by about 14 points. Laura Bischoff, what is the level of buyer's remorse that Democrats have over this year?
I think, I'm sure Dale will have something to say with this, about this, there was a primary with P.G. Sittenfeld, the Cincinnati City Councilman, and I think there was a concerted effort to make sure Ted won the primary and tell PG, you'll have your time later. So I think, there might be some buyer's remorse. I got to say that I think Portman has run a really tight race, a tight ship. He's been everywhere. He's focusing on non-controversial issues that everybody can agree on. He has right now airing like this ad with this woman whose daughter died of a heroin overdose, and she talks about what Portman has done on drug abuse and opiate abuse efforts, and so that's something that everybody can agree on. And I think it's well played.
Dale, you did work for P.G. Sittenfeld in his primary bid against Ted Strickland. Can you say I told you so? Would P.G. Sittenfeld have been a better candidate than Ted Strickland, do you think?
Yes, I do, which is why I was working for him. Now, there's 5 weeks left. I'm still hoping that Ted can defy the odds and pull a rabbit out of the hat. But frankly, it's not looking very likely at this point. I can't say that PG could have beaten Portman. Portman raised $1 bazillion. He's run a good campaign. It's always hard to beat an incumbent. But it's hard to believe that PG wouldn't have run a better campaign than what Ted is running now. For one thing, they couldn't have run against PG's record as governor, which is what they've done with Ted. They'd have been left with the argument of experience, while PG, at the age of 31, would have run as the agent of change, which I think this year is a pretty good message. And even if PG didn't win, the worst that would have happened is we'd have had a young, attractive, articulate candidate that we would have groomed, would have gotten some statewide name ID, would have been ready for the next election. Instead, if Ted loses, we're going to be left with a man who is 75 years old, has an overall statewide record of 1 win and 2 losses, and has almost certainly run his last race.
Mark, who else could have run for the Democrats who should have run? And there was really nobody else that was interested. I mean, Congressman Tim Ryan thought about it, apparently. Richard Cordray could have run. He's in Washington, heading up the Consumer Financial Bureau there.
Yeah, maybe some other Democrats that you might be able to name, but it might be an issue as to, what is the Democratic bench, for this position. But I think one of the things that was happening with this race was it was pretty clear, I think, that, early on that Ted Strickland wanted to run, and he was able to get, the party in particular to coalesce behind him, and it helped, obviously, in the primary. But I think, it can't really be underestimated, the campaign that Rob Portman has run, and a testament to that, I think, is the talk you're hearing now about that his get out the vote effort in terms of getting his supporters to the polls might actually help Donald Trump in the presidential race by getting Republicans to the polls who would also vote for him, but they're not getting there to vote for Trump specifically.
Not to generalize, which is a thing that's been said many times in this campaign, but who'd have thought that a white later middle-aged Republican would be running the web-savvy campaign, Mike Onondaga.
Well, yeah, web savvy as well as on TV. I got to tell you, at some point, I'm getting sick and tired of seeing all these Rob Portman commercials on TV because that's pretty much what's flooded the airways. But regarding this issue overall, I agree. Stop the presses with everything Dale said. He's spot on, 100% right, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, let me just finish by saying this. Look, I hope that once this is over, and if Ted loses, and again, I hope he doesn't, but if he does, I hope the people who run the Ohio Democratic Party will learn a lesson from this and will allow rank-and-file Democrats to pick their nominees in the future rather than the big shots putting their thumbs on the scale.
All right, our final topic. Many times when police shoot someone, the story fades relatively quickly. That's not the case anymore, especially when the person shot is a 13-year-old boy. Family and supporters took over the Columbus City Council meeting this week. They want an independent investigation into the September 14th shooting. A white police officer shot Tyree King on that day after police say the boy pulled what looked like a handgun from his waistband. King was suspected in a robbery. It turns out that gun was a BB gun.
Tired of going to funeral after funeral. I'm sick of it. Right. And y'all keep getting justifiable.
Mark Niquette, why are police departments and city officials who aren't directly involved with the police department so reluctant to just have an independent investigation of these shootings? It seemed like it would solve a lot of problems in the community anyway.
Yeah, that's a good question because it kind of, appeals to our sense of fairness and being, able to, trust the results. The idea that we're not somebody's not investigating themselves or, an outside objective person is looking at it, group, whatever. The only thing I could really think of is that, these are in most cases, pretty high profile situations that involve split-second decisions by officers. And there's a difference between sort of what's legally justified sometimes and what public opinion might find is justified. In other words, take, for example, the Tamir Rice case in Cleveland. A 12-year-old who gets shot and he's holding a toy gun. The public opinion is overwhelming that the police overreacted here and shot this boy unnecessarily. And, the investigation found that ultimately there's fault for the police, but, in this case, it was reasonable. The officer's actions were reasonable in that case. That was a legal judgment. So, I think part of what happens is you want to see the process work through the legal system. And I think police agencies and city officials might want to see sort of grand jury or a legal process rather than having sort of an outside independent investigation that could be more influenced by public opinion.
And prosecutors do argue that the grand jury system is independent, but the critics say that the prosecutors can guide that grand jury however they want. What is the solution, Dale?
Well, look, I'm sure council was caught off guard by people coming in and kind of taking over the meeting, but they certainly should not have been caught off guard by the emotion and the sense of frustration that is boiling up, not just in our city, but all over the country over these shootings. And to be honest, and without casting aspersions on County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, I really believe council should seriously consider bringing the U.S. Justice Department into this and allowing them to take a look at these shootings, because I think people in the community would feel a lot more confident if that justice was being done, if they knew that the facts were being reviewed by a fresh and independent set of eyes.
Laura, those can take a long time, and Columbus has gone through that Justice Department thing back in the late 90s.
Right, it can be very, very, and it seems like with the number of shootings that we've been having, you wonder if there's the capacity in there. Maybe the right thing to do for Ohio or for other states would be to set up an independent review agency process for all of the, I don't know how many police departments there are in Ohio, but there's hundreds and hundreds of them.
Mike, can there really be an independent investigation? Because no matter what the outcome, it's going to be controversial.
Sure, unless you get the outcome you desire. The other side's going to think it's not fair. So, but at the end of the day, Mike, there's a 99.9% chance that an officer is going to fire their weapon if you pull a gun on a police officer. Let's just put that on the table, regardless of your skin color, age, race, creed, color, number one. Number two, if I support Black Lives Matter. I don't support their tactics and strategies, but I support them. The best thing they can do is get to the ballot box and vote some of these guys out out of office at City Hall and other places they don't like, the way their city leaders, that's the greatest weapon they have is the ballot box.
Okay, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. And Mike, you're up first.
Sure. The Ganodakis family would like to thank Governor Kasich and Steve Sherhold, the director of the Board of Pharmacy. The most recent ORS report that's come out has demonstrated that we have a decrease in 92 million doses of opioids in the state of Ohio, 1.4 million decrease in the number of opioid prescriptions. We have a lot of work to do on the heroin problem, but our governor's doing a great job tackling prescription drug abuse in Ohio.
Dale.
Donald Trump is now hinting that he intends to close his campaign by jumping into the sewer and dredging up all of the old Clinton sex scandals. It's a desperation tactic that is not going to work, and if he does it, I predict we're going to see Hillary's lead widen in the weeks ahead.
Mark.
We talked about the polls declaring the winner in the debate this week, and one of the interesting features of the Gallup poll is they went back and found that only 3 of the declared winners of the first debate actually went on to win the presidency. So the second debate does matter.
Yeah, it's a 3-game series, as they say in baseball. Laura.
So I have a story in DaytonDailyNews.com about the 10-year anniversary of the smoking ban in Ohio is coming up. And Ohio's smoking rate still ranks above the national average, unfortunately. But it has gone down just a little bit, and public health officials think that it's a home run for Ohio.
All right. It's the end of an era at WOSU. The woman whose voice who you hear at the start of Columbus on the Record, Marilyn Smith, longtime news anchor on 89.7 NPR News, retires as of today, Friday, after 30-plus years on the air. We wish her all the best and thank her for her great service to WOSU and, in particular, our listeners and web users over the years. So good luck, Marilyn. Have a great retirement. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, WOSU.org. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.